Black Panther Party, 1966, when Huey and I founded that organization, that particular year, numerous acts of police brutality had sparked a lot of spontaneous riots, something that Huey and I were against, the spontaneous riots. Even a year earlier, in 1965, in Watts, 65 people were killed, 200 wounded, 5,000 arrested. And Huey and I began to try to figure out how could we organize 5,000 youthful black folks into some kind of political electoral power movement. Stokely Carmichael was on the scene with Black Power. We were questioning, Huey and I, about the need for a functional definition of power. And we came up with this, that power is the ability to define phenomena, then in turn make it act in a desired manner. Well, the phenomena of racism structured in the city council at that time. Huey and I, working with the North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center, the advisory board, we got 5,000 signatures for them to go to the city council to get the city council to try to set up a police review board to deal with complaints of police brutality. Well, the city council ignored them. So that phenomena was that the city council was just a racist structure which could care less about the 48% black and Chicano people who lived in the city of Oakland. So there we are trying to figure out what to do. We finally concluded through those months that we had to start a new organization. And we sit down and begin to write out this 10-point platform and program in the North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center in North Oakland, California, in the community where Hugh and I lived. And we wrote out this program. We want power to determine our own destiny in our own black community, alluding to the need to organize political electoral power, full employment, decent housing, decent education that taught us about our true selves, not to have to fight in Vietnam. Immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people was point number 7. The right to have juries of our peers in the courts, what have you. We summed it up. We wanted land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And in the tail end, we stuck in 2 famous paragraphs. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to separate themselves from the political bondage, that was the emphasis, the political bondage, which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature, nature's God entitle them. I mean, this was the kind of summarization we gave to our meeting. And we summarized that 10-point platform and program, flipped a coin to see who would be chairman. I won chairman, and we created the Black Panther Party. Actually, we had written the 10-point platform and program of the organization, but yet didn't have a name. A couple of days later, Huey P. Newton and I was trying to figure out why it was that on a Lowndes County Freedom Organization, it was Lowndes County, Mississippi, a pamphlet we had. Why did they have this charging Black Panther as a logo? And Huey come up with some notion that if you drive a panther into a corner, if it can't go left and it can't go right, then it will tend to come out of that corner to wipe out or stop its aggressor. So I said, that's just like black people. All the civil rights people are getting brutalized across this country for exercising the First Amendment of the Constitution, which is the law of the land. They can't go left. Other people who've tried to patrol the police with law books and tape recorders, they've been brutalized, they can't go right. Even the young whites who are protesting, I said, who's a support of the black people, can't go left, can't go right. I said, we just like the Black Panthers. And in effect, Huey P. Newton and I named our organization the Black Panther Party. But at first it was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Later we dropped the self-defense aspect because we didn't want it to be classified as a paramilitary organization. The only other group that sprung up about 2 or 3 weeks after we had started was the Northern California branch of the Black Panther Party over in San Francisco. I had worked with that particular group previously in the revolutionary organization called Revolutionary Action Movement, but I couldn't get along with them. I guess I had a view that they had a misunderstanding about what revolution was about. And in effect, we did not, we attempted to work together because they came to us. We were very prominent in the community there for about 3 months, patrolling police. People really liked what we were doing. And the Northern California operation came over and says, we want you to help us escort Sister Betty Shabazz from the airport when she arrives for a rally that would be held in Hunters Point, one of the riot areas that people were trying to cool down and organize politically. We said, sure, we'd love to work with you guys. But what in effect happened there is that this group, we said we had 20 guns, and then they said they had 20. Then we found they only had 5. So we supplied only 10 or 12 or something like that. And then we found out after we did all this escorting and then later had a Mexican type standoff with the police, well, this other group, the Revolutionary Action group of the Black Panther Party, had split the scene. And we didn't know why. We found out later on that their guns were unloaded. And we thought and felt that they were jeopardizing the whole situation by not letting us know that. First, when you're dealing with patrolling police, when we decided to even do that at first, I mean, first we had to accept the fact that we may get killed or go to jail. But we were also sensitive to the fact that peaceful demonstrators were being brutalized all across this country, that their rights were being violated. And when we decided to do that, you have to remember we were dealing with clear-cut fine points of the law, that as long as the weapon was not concealed, so we felt secure there that we weren't violating the law. We studied all the gun laws. We knew them very well. And when you walk up suddenly, you know, when we started patrolling the police, 6 or 7 of us, and I think we had one sister, she was packing a pistol, and I had a pistol, and Huey had a shotgun, and our uniforms, and we had our 10-point platform and program, copies of that, tape recorders, and law books. And I remember one of these first events when we got out of the car. We saw a policeman, you know, making an arrest of some kind, about 20 or 30 people in the community standing to the side watching. And the black folks, one of them says, "Hey, who are these people? Hey, man, these guys got, hey, man, I'm gonna move out of here. These guys got guns and stuff like that." And so Hubert says, "No, brothers and sisters, it's not necessary to leave. This is a new organization, the Black Panther Party. We're here to observe these police in the community, make sure there's not going to be any more police brutality." And little Bobby Hutton passed out some of the 10-point platforms and program, which I have applications to join. And it came down to some point where the policeman says, "What are you doing with those guns?" And Huey says, "Well, we got ours to defend ourselves and to observe you." And the police, "You have no right to observe me." And Huey, with all his law study, because he was in night law school at the time, California State Supreme Court ruling states that everyone has a right to observe a police officer carrying out his duty as long as they stand a reasonable distance away, and a reasonable distance was constituted in that particular California Supreme Court ruling as 8 to 10 feet. I'm standing approximately 22 feet from you. I will observe you, carry out your duty, whether you like it or not. And the black community is saying, "Well, go ahead on and tell it." Well, I mean, what you're doing here is that you have a nervousness about it at first a bit, but with the community's reaction, which is really what your objective is, it gives you a good feeling that you're right. The guns are loaded. They're not pointing at anyone, because we also know California Penal Code, you can't even play around and point a loaded weapon at anyone because it constitutes assault with a deadly weapon. So really I begin to feel secure with our posture, particularly with the people around, the black community who stayed around to watch this and to see the police back down. And after we learned, after a couple of months, that these police were trying to figure out where they could catch us illegally, I mean, we studied the law much more clearly to find that we was clearly right. Ultimately, they made a law against us to stop us from carrying guns. That's how illegal we were. Well, we had only hit the press 3 or 4 times so far, print media, and what we had heard is that the police department had went to a local congressman to get a bill written, and it would hit the newspaper. So Huey called me up and says, "We have to go to Sacramento." It was conceived as a media event that the press is always at the California State Capitol. So that we got up there and read a statement in opposition to what the California legislature was doing with respect to us trying to exercise our right to, you know, deal with police brutality in our black community. Then, of course, the press would carry it, at least our side would carry it, and of course, hopefully we could get more people to join the Black Panther Party. But in effect, well, even when we arrived, this is what we arrived there, all these black men and women, 24 males and 6 females with guns, and Ronald Reagan, then the governor, was on the lawn with 200 future leaders of America, you know, 12 and 13 and 14-year-old kids. And these kids started leaving his session on the line and coming to see us. And these young white kids thought we were a gun club. You know, "Hey, neat 30-06 you got there." Well, the media followed these kids because they were there and asked, "Aren't you the Black Panthers?" "Yes." And I began to read a statement. And of course, the press later led us inside. And I was trying to get to the spectators section, but we wound up on the floor of the California State Legislature. The Black Panther Party, me in particular, and the group that was with me, we were branded as hoodlums invading the Capitol. In fact, after I read the message once, I went to go inside to the spectator section. So when we got in the halls, you have to imagine there's 100 press people cameras, still cameras, print media people backing up, and I'm saying, where is the spectator section? And the press saying, this way, Bobby. In effect, they led me on the wrong floor, and we wound up down on the floor. Some party members got ahead of me with shotguns, pistol, and wound up on the actual floor of the California State Legislature. And the press is not even supposed to go in there, and they follow them in, taking pictures of Panthers with guns on the floor. I had to get the party members out. I said, come on, we're in the wrong place, because I was really looking for the spectator section. So we come out, and not until we left the Capitol, 2 blocks away when we stopped in a service station to get gas and whatever, did we all get busted. Because in effect, what we did at the Capitol was not only, then later we were charged with disturbing the peace of the assembly, which was a misdemeanor, and I wound up doing 6 months in jail for it. Huey and I had been involved for some time, off and on, studying black history, what have you, what Malcolm had done, where Martin Luther King had come from. I was highly influenced by Martin Luther King at first, and then later Malcolm X. Largely, the Black Panther Party come out of a lot of readings, Huey and I putting scrutiny to everything going on in the United States of America. It's like we must have subscribed to 20 some odd different periodicals, offbeat periodicals like The Liberator, Freedom Ways, what have you, even some periodicals out of Africa. But we had read and digested Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth. I mean, we knew Lerone Bennett's Before the Mayflower. I knew about the 250 slave revolts that included Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, and Denmark Vesey. I mean, Frederick Douglass, everything, the Nation of Islam, what had happened through the 1930s, what have you, and so on. And there we were with all this knowledge about our history, our struggle against racism. And when we started the Black Panther Party, it was more or less based on where Malcolm was coming from, where our struggle was, an argument about the civil rights movement not learning to own property. And there's Stokely Carmichael in 1965, 66 talking about black power, and we thought we needed a functional definition of just the word power alone. And we felt that if we define the phenomena of a city government framework or institution of government as racist in terms of the institutional racism that we had understood from studying that history, then it's time we made that institutionalized political function act in a desired manner. And how do we go about that? So we had to organize political electoral power, we thought. So this is where we were coming from. Malcolm X had a particular influence on the Panthers in the sense that earlier he had stated that if the civil rights people down south who were exercising the First Amendment of the Constitution, that's what he alluded to, are going to be violated by racists, then every black man who has a shotgun in his home has a right to defend himself. Even the Deacons for Defense, in this context, had an influence there. Even as we read the history of Robert Williams, also had an influence there. So you can see this has been rolling since '59 in terms of how we see the history, even with respect to the slavery votes historically. So it comes to a point that if the civil rights people who are peacefully protesting, if their rights are going to be violated, then we're going to have to move to a higher level and take the position that we have a right to defend ourselves based on the Constitution of the United States. The Marxist type philosophy had no real influence on us creating the Black Panther Party. It was later that we found a way to make money by selling the little red book, The Thoughts of Mao Zedong. We sold this book for 3 or 4 weeks before we even opened it up to read it, because we would take it up to the white students at the University of California. We'd buy it for 20 cents and sell it for $1. Get your red book, The Thoughts of Chairman Mao Zedong, $1. I mean, people hand over fist. So we'd run out, go pay our rent, buy a few extra shotguns, pay our phone bill, go get more books, come back. We even went to a big anti-war rally with 35,000 people there and sold 2,000 or 3,000 books that day. We left our guns at home. All we wanted to do was sell books because we needed funds, financial support. And one day, after all of this selling of these books, we sit down and start reading this book. And one point in there it says, do not steal not even a needle and a piece of thread from the people. We thought that was great. We started reading all these points. And then we began to incorporate some of the aspects that Mao talked about in this little red book. Later, we picked up the 4 works of Mao Zedong. We began to read that. And then we began to look at Marxist-Leninist materials. But we never was what you call doctrinaire socialists. In fact, we didn't get along too well with many of the hardcore doctrinaire type socialists. We used some of the principles that were applicable to our situation in the USA in terms of the organizing principles, what have you. We were more or less, we believe in a sort of cooperative socialism, and we didn't accept per se a sort of a state-controlled command economy type concept. So the way we did it, we pulled from what we thought was valuable to us And yes, brothers and sisters begin to accept that. I mean, you would have to imagine a brother who's been taught how to read in the Black Panther Party standing up and telling another brother on dope, brother, you're acting in an unprincipled manner, you know what I mean? That practices the criterion of the truth and things like this here. So this is one of the things, to have grassroots brothers and sisters citing principled posture, taking a principled posture and trying to educate the community and kind of in their attempt to help raise the consciousness of the black community. Well, community control was in a vague way from the initial point of, that was all related to the functional definition of power. But we initiated a program where we got some research teams out of University of California and some other places and put together a real referendum to the ballot for community control of police, really to decentralize the police and have 5 commissioners duly elected by the people, a form of more participatory democracy here. And we finally did get it on the ballot in the city of Berkeley. It lost by 1 percentage point, but that was one aspect, along with selling the Black Panther Party newspaper and dealing with a lot of other problems in the community. That was one of the key political electoral aspects in 1968 that we attempted to initiate. Okay. Effectively, as a national organization, the Black Panther Party began to move. Well, originally, you have to understand that when I did the when I went to the California State Capitol, that caused us first to have international notoriety. But in terms of on an organizational level, the Black Panther Party really spread from, prior to the murder of the assassination of Brother Martin Luther King, we only had about 700 members in 6 or 7 chapters and branches, largely on the West Coast. Following the assassination of Martin Luther King, our organization grew from 700 to 5,000 members plus. And with the assassination of Robert Kennedy later that year, the young white radicals readily coalesced with us at our direction. They couldn't direct us, they coalesced with us. So it was whoever in the power structure who murdered Martin Luther King caused a lot of people who sided with Martin Luther King to say, the heck with it, let's join the Panthers. And they, in effect, tagged us as the vanguard of the revolution. Young man standing out in front of the Black Panther Party office that sold papers at my Kleinman's High School, a black school, said something about the fact that some teachers was trying to get free lunches for high school students. And I said, what about the little kids? They need to eat too. So I initiated with the Central Committee that we wanted a free breakfast for children program. Eldridge Cleaver called it a sissy program. I says, who's the greatest revolutionary in the world to you, Eldridge Cleaver? He says, Mao Zedong. I said, when you read the material, it says always serve the people. But mine and Huey's concept related to that was that the recipients of the program, in effect, become educated and understand that they have to organize in opposition to the racist power structure. But the breakfast programs initiated in Reverend Neal's church in West Oakland, California, spread it around this country to a point where we was feeding over a couple 100,000 kids free breakfast. Later, Willie Brown and some other state legislators in California moved and got a bill through, even with an override, for $5 million to all the schools in the poor and working class communities for free breakfast for children. They were part of a revolutionary policy. Some people like to say they were reform programs. We says, no, a reform program comes from the power structure who's repressing you. This is a people's revolutionary program which educates the people that they have to be in opposition and oppose the power structure. That is the revolutionary character of the program. The program to us makes a statement, even if the power structure incorporates it in its system, it makes a statement that we're saying from the community, that's what you should have been doing in the first darn place. So that's our attitude. That was our attitude about that. Huey Newton's basic genius, as we used to call it, was his ability to deal with the contradiction and raise the contradiction. In a sense, I would say that Huey Newton's genius was let's say it like this here. Huey was able to take the Panther Party and take the very concept of civil disobedience and put it on the cutting edge, while at the same time holding a legal posture. In other words, you distinguish civil disobedience from criminality. Well, the power structure would say you're all criminals. But we know that a civil disobedience stands out loud on the corner and states what he or she is opposed to, whereas a criminal is covert. So Huey put it on the cutting edge without becoming criminal, and put it on the cutting edge to make the issue sharp enough to make even the white racists realize that they have to pay attention to what's going on here. That was Huey Newton's genius. Huey was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in Oakland, California. We had scheduled a birthday rally for Huey, and Eldridge and I left and went to Washington, D.C. to visit Stokely to see would he come to the rally. He agreed to come to the rally. A week or so after that, James Foreman came out and started rapping with us in Los Angeles, and later came up and explained to us that seemingly SNCC was getting ready to fall apart because of these white students who tended to dominate the decision-making policy. And later, after that, we heard that the United States government was getting ready to draft Stokely to go fight in Vietnam. Well, Eldridge and I put our heads together and we wrote up a draft notice for Stokely. I went to the front steps of the San Francisco Police Department, had a press conference, and read the draft notice that Stokely Carmichael was hereby drafted into the Black Panther Party, and he will not fight in the racial imperialistic power structures war in Vietnam. Stokely, in effect, accepted. Rap Brown came to the Huey P. Newton birthday rally, James Foreman and others, and we asked Rap Brown would he accept the draft also. So Rap Brown became the Minister of Justice, Stokely Carmichael became the Prime Minister, and James Foreman himself from SNCC became the Minister of Education. There was not a history of relations. I mean, whenever Stokely came to the San Francisco Oakland Bay Area in '65 and '66, before the party was started, Huey and I would always go to those rallies to hear him speak at the time, but in terms of having a direct, hardcore relation or being a member of the organization for him, no, we were not. Stokely wound up in 1969 in Scandinavia, speaking around the world, representing the party and representing the black people's struggle in America in general. That's the way we told him to do it, your free will. But while we had developed a lot of alliances, working coalitions, may I say, with the white left in America, Stokely began to criticize that, and we told him he was wrong, that no white people run our organization, that all those people in the working coalition functions and caters to some of the needs we need based on the fact that if they are truly against racism, if we need this kind of support, give it to us. If you don't give us the support, get out of our way. But that spurred a situation that when I got back in early 1969, that we quietly kicked Stokely out of the Black Panther Party and told him he wasn't a member anymore. We didn't want a whole lot of press at that time about it because it's enough having a bunch of racist media trying to destroy what you represent, you know, by saying they've split, that kind of stuff. Well, initially, I guess what we really looked at was that we had a larger, well, first, here was two organizations that could somewhat merge its leadership. The notoriety of the spokesman, Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver, Huey was in jail as a political prisoner, what have you, and that it would spur a broader ability, you know, to organize that political, black community, political electoral power unity and give this revolutionary character that the Black Panther Party needed. Yes, the revolution was already going on. I mean, the signs was not only the spontaneous riots that had occurred through the latter part of the '60s, but the civil rights movement, the fact that the racist power structure all across this country was attacking peaceful demonstrators, and now here we had moved after several years to a position of defending ourselves. People like Malcolm X, who had preceded us, now here we were attempting to implement some aspects of where he was coming from. It was a battle, it was a struggle, and I think we rooted ourselves in the sense that we began to get millions of black folks to really look at where we were coming from and our stand against the power structure. Now, a lot of people call revolution a confrontation. Really, what you and I meant by revolution was a need to revolve more political power and economic power back into the hands of the people. That's really what a revolution is. Those intermediate confrontations evolved because the racist power structure do not want us to exercise our democratic human rights to organize our people in opposition to their structured racism. One of the first working coalitions we had was with the anti-draft movement. So you have to understand something. Huey P. Newton and I was in and about around these guys many times way before the party started and sometimes after. Now, we would sometimes be around University of California and we would be arguing with them. You don't know what police brutality is, and I would make jokes. You guys need a course, Police Brutality 101, before you understand what we mean. What do you mean? You need to get brutalized by some police so you understand what's happening in the black community. And then I used to say, maybe you need an advanced course, Police Brutality 405. And once these guys got brutalized out there in front of the induction center in Oakland, California, I said, interesting, Police Brutality 105. I guess we began most of our coalition with the Young White Radicals because of resource, but initially it was the Young White Radicals who sort of identified with Huey being in jail after the vicious police brutality upon the draft resistors. And that initiated the coalition. What in effect happened though was when they won the coalition, we demanded of them that they support us and that you don't run our organizations. And from there it became with the Peace and Freedom Party, who wanted to get on the ballot. We thought that was a nice thing to do, and that third party factor. So we let them into black community to register in the Peace and Freedom Party. But a third of the people wound up registering the Black Panther Party anyway. And as we looked at it, and as we saw the anti-war protests and the young whites who did really get out in the streets to demonstrate against structured racism, we saw that as a resource, in that another aspect of our analysis was that we're talking about power to the people. We made a new analysis of what nationalism was about, black nationalism, that whatever black unity we had, it was really a sort of a catalyst to help humanize the world, and we were that catalyst here in Afro-America, or Africa, that's what it was about. And that the world was composed of more than just black folks, you know. So the coalition aspect to us being what one defined as a minority in the United States of America, if the white community showed some split, then we should side with that aspect of the group that seemed to be or would act as friends to us. The whole Black Panther Party contingent, we all arrived at the airport. Huey says, line everybody up. Some policemen in plain clothes come out and says, what are you doing with these guns? Huey says, that's irrelevant, it's none of your business. Some more policemen come out. He says, where are you going? He says, we're going to the airport. The policeman says, you can't go in the airport lined up with guns like this. He said, this place accommodates over 200 people. Any place that accommodates over 200 people, we exercise our constitutional rights. The guns are not illegal. Be quiet. Bobby, let's go. I said, all right, forward, hup. We start marching. We walked into the airport, walked all the way to the gate, waited for Sister Betty Shabazz. We surrounded her. We came out. Police are walking everywhere. People with their eyes all bugged out. What are these guys doing with these guns? We come out. We get into the car. And we take off, we go to Ramparts magazine for Eldridge Cleaver to interview Sister Betty Shabazz. The police came up because there's two Panthers standing out in front of Ramparts. Several more police came up. Then some police came up and little Bobby Hutton was cussing this policeman out, telling him, you ain't coming in here, you ain't got no warrant, because his brothers begin to know a little law, et cetera, et cetera. And as we came out, Sister Betty Shabazz said she did not want any cameras. And so when we came out, Huey came out. So Huey had a magazine. He put it up in front of this Channel 7 camera. And the guy knocked it down. Huey put it back up. And then the guy hit Huey. And then Huey turned around and popped the cameraman. And then turned around. He said, police officer, arrest this man. He assaulted me. And imagine Huey is telling the police to arrest this white reporter with the, et cetera. He assaulted me. Then the police come around and start grabbing their guns. Huey said, spread, don't turn on your back on these back shooting MFs. And the next thing you know, we spread. I put my hand on my gun. The police says, don't put your hand on it. I says, don't you put your hand on your gun. We spread it and we backed up, a real Mexican standoff. The other guys with the other group were gone with Sister Betty Shabazz. She'd been gone. And we got in our cars and we split and left. And then we found out the other guys, the 5 people, didn't even have their guns loaded. My old personal recollections of Fred Hampton as a party leader was the time when I went to Chicago to see firsthand what Brother Fred Hampton and Bobby Rush had organized. It blew my mind. Fred Hampton's charismatic ability to teach and rap to young brothers and sisters, have 1,000 young brothers and sisters in the church house saying, power to the people, power to the people, power to the people. And to even find out that Fred Hampton had previously been in the NAACP, and here he was, you know, had all these breakfast programs, the health clinics rolling and everything, and to speak. And I remember later telling party members that if anything ever happened to me, because I know sooner or later these racists are going to want to kill me, that since Fred Hampton is deputy chairman under me with the Illinois State chapter of the Black Panther Party, then he will become the chairman of our national organization. Please make sure you always consider him. And I was telling members of the Central Committee that. And Fred Hampton was just one of those young brothers who could articulate, bring home, capture the feeling of young people and break it down. He could break, I was good at breaking all these theory down so the average person can understand it. But Fred Hampton, he was twice as good as I was. The Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party was attacked several times. And one particular time I remember they raided the Black Panther Party office and they had a short shootout. And of course, we had a rule that we would take an arrest. So somehow or another, you know, it was noted, so they took the arrest. But what the police did is they went in like Elliot Ness with sledgehammers. I mean, our press, all of our IBM typewriters that had been donated by the white radicals, our newspapers, I mean, our mimeograph papers by the caseload, and then set the whole building on fire. This is what the FBI and the Chicago police did. Now, the idea on the part of the police was to psych the community out. They called me up the next day. I says, is the office open? Well, no, the police boarded the place up. I say, open it back up. You got the lease to the place. What? I says, open it up. Take all that boarding down, paint that place. And the Black Panther Party members start working for a couple of days. The next thing you know, the community start bringing wood, paint, and everything, and open that Black Panther Party office right back up. And of course, this was an attempt to terrorize us out of existence. At the same time, if we would close down, it would leave the black community saying, well, they stopped them. Actually, through the year 69, we had a big purge in the Black Panther Party because we had grown by early 69 to 7,000, 8,000 black people in the Black Panther Party. And we had too many provocateur agents, and then too many incidents and things were happening, you know, like $42 service station robbery in the Black Panther Party newspaper truck with bold black 1-foot letters that says the Black Panther Black Community News Service for $42, and I'm bringing in $25,000 a year to the Black Panther Party, every penny going into the treasury of the Black Panther Party. What do we need with $42? You see, so this was a lot of provocateur agent activity that was going on that in effect was an attempt on the part of the FBI to make us look bad in the eyes of not only the public, but the black community in particular. So we were very leery, and we began to kick people out. Even if people fool around and wouldn't pass some leaflets out, kick them out. We got too many people in the organization. We didn't know what was happening, because sometimes you would have some people passing out leaflets and you find a stack of them in a trash can somewhere, you know, that kind of stuff. And who was in this area, so kick that person out of the party, get rid of them. We were too big. In fact, I think we reduced, by the end of that year, we reduced our membership by 50%. We were infiltrated by the FBI, police, provocateur agents. I mean, it's documented fact through COINTELPRO's operation, through our Freedom of Information Act facts. I mean, they're showing, I mean, that the FBI had set up for the National Guard Armory in Chicago to be ripped off and then blamed on us. I mean, it was all set up using provocateur agents by the FBI to do that, you know. I mean, John Huggins and Alprenus Bunchy Carter had been shot, killed, and murdered in UCLA. And nowadays we find and trace all this information back to provocateur agent activity orchestrated by what? The FBI. I was sitting in San Francisco County Jail that morning and read the newspapers that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark had been killed and murdered that morning. Over the next few days, I found out a few more facts of the situation. And to hear and understand that State's Attorney Hanrahan, with a special police group, had entered the house at 5 a.m. in the morning and shot the place up. And to hear that the bedroom, the wall this way to the bedroom and the wall this way to the bedroom had hundreds of rounds shot in at bed level. I mean, and then hear that Fred Hampton had been shot in the head. And Mark Clark, of course, killed upon their entry at 5 a.m. in the morning, to me it was a culminating point, you know. I had worried about too many of us getting killed earlier, but it was a culminating point. The only real relief that came out of that was a couple of months later, when Roy Wilkins of the NAACP created a commission to investigate the FBI's concerted attempt to smash the Black Panther Party, which really is a pivot point and which caused a decline in attacks upon black people, upon Black Panther Party members' offices and homes. It wasn't Fred Hampton who rejected the Weather Underground, it was me. I gave Fred Hampton direct orders not to participate with the Weather Underground. Eldridge Cleaver wanted him to participate. Eldridge Cleaver was trying to run the Black Panther Party from Algiers. I said, don't participate in it, because all you're doing is setting yourself up. I says, the Black Panther, I says, they're young whites, and I'm not opposed to their activity, but do not bring black people out of the black community to run with the white young underground in the white community. It don't work, brother. All they're gonna do is corner you, and they're gonna kill the blacks before they kill the whites. I gave him direct orders not to participate, in opposition to Eldridge Cleaver attempting to give Fred Hampton direct orders to participate, and Fred Hampton followed my directives. Well, I thought that was positive to the extent that previously to that, the Afro-American Policemen's League of the Chicago Police Department basically supported us. Most people don't know that there were quite a few policemen here and there who understood what we were getting at when we talked about structured racism inside the police department. Most people don't know that when you and I, around the time we first started the Black Panther Party, we had a black policeman who was a friend of ours who recruited with the police department. We didn't want to destroy the police department. What we wanted to do was run it. That's why I ran for mayor of Oakland in the first place, so we could reorder it and redirect it and make sure it served the real basic desires and needs of the people. So when we had a black mayor, a black police chief, etc., that was like a sign of things beginning to change. You know, to control those agencies of government was important in terms of when you start talking about power or black power. But see, I don't know that much about Gary. I just made that statement as a sign of direction, of change that was coming about. I don't know much about Gary. I knew that we had a black mayor. I thought that was great, that a black mayor could be elected. The fact that we had some policemen there and a black police chief, that was important. Now, on the other end of the factor, what if that black policeman chief later had turned out to be a vicious, I don't call him a vicious black pig, you see what I mean? So, I mean, I can distinguish between the color you are and the content of your character, you see what I mean? So, it was like a hope for a decent character that may hopefully evolve. I wasn't allowed to participate in the convention. I was taken to some entertainment thing to speak to some people for 20 minutes, which I always thought was absurd in the first place, being an organization as the Black Panther Party, which was entrenched and rooted into this overall struggle. So for whatever reason, whoever organized that convention, they obviously didn't want a leading representative of the Black Panther Party to participate in the convention. Largely, the Central Committee evolved to a point that we may have had 10 or 12 different members. They were mostly initially composed of people who ran chapters in other states. Many times, like, we may not get to Fred Hampton or Bobby Rush in Chicago, but if the Central Committee, if we had a quorum for it, if we had a majority of 3/4 votes for a particular policy, now it says, all right, we're going to create breakfast for children programs, the Central Committee agreed, called democratic centralism, majority vote, then we'd give directives to chapters and branches that they had to set up a pre-breakfast program or set up a preventative medical health care clinic, beginning maybe with sickle cell anemia testing in a local church that may allow the use of that church. So it was a lot of directives given. We had Minister of Defense chairman, Minister of Education, Minister of Information, and so on. Well, in each chapter, we had deputy chairman, deputy minister of defense, deputy minister of education, and so on. Each branch, you know what I mean, it was like director of minister of education and so on for each chapter and branch so that they could carry out their basic functions based on the directives they got from the Central Committee of the Black Panther Party. Actually, Bill Consulate contacted the Black Panther Party. Originally, the request from the prisoners was for Huey, but then the Central Committee decided that I would go. When we arrived at Attica, at first they wouldn't even let me in the prison, the very first day. I mean, these guards came up and pointed shotguns at the front windshield and the rear windshield, And then finally, Consular was called out, and then they refused to let me in. We left. The grounds was on the highway, headed back to Buffalo, New York. Here comes some state troopers stopping us. Warden Oswald wants you to come back. Okay, but when we go back, they let us in. I see the committee for a short period there. And they're trying to, some are talking to me about the need to get these prisoners to drop the last 3 negotiating points. We go into the prison. When I get into the prison, I make a speech to the prisoners, you know, and power to the people, prisoners' power, etc., to this effect, okay? Then when we finish with the speech, there's a lot of other committee members with us, you know, the negotiating committee. And about 2, there's a couple of the brothers call and says, Bobby, could we pull you over here and talk with you? So they pull me down to the other end of the table, away from everybody else, away from any cameras. And this is what they explained. They wanted me to see if it was possible that if we could get a helicopter, a sizable helicopter, to come in over the wall real fast, let the 9 or 10 prisoners who wanted to get out and then take them out of the country, and then they would drop the last 3 negotiating points. I says, what? And they says, they heard, these prisoners heard that we had a black United Airlines pilot, I mean, who flew on a full-time job with United Airlines. And he did work with us because he was an editor part-time of the Black Panther Party newspaper. And I said, hey, I don't know. I said, but I see where you brothers are coming from, because that would be a real revolutionary act. I really identified with that. Could we pull this off? I said, I did that. What it means, I'm saying I'm going to have to leave, man, in the morning or something to get back to Oakland, because I got to talk to Central Committee. I can't talk on the phones or whatever. He says, right. So next morning, so I leave the prison. Next morning, I try to really get back in the prison, but they won't let me back in. Warden Oswald will not let me back in. I leave and catch a plane at 12 noon or something. I wind up in California, you know, we 2-3 hours behind in difference in time, what have you. I have a meeting. Charles Gary, our lawyer, Charles Gary, he's the chief counsel for all cases of the Black Panther Party, comes over. I tell him what the situation is. We deducted it's impossible to even get anybody, even our white radical friends, anybody with such short notice even to even consider whether or not they would take the chance of getting killed. When me and my other Black Panther Party members arrived there, we was readily surrounded with shotguns, you know, a couple of guards in front, a couple of policemen, state policemen in the rear, shotguns pointed directly at the window. I mean, actually they pointed when they found out I was Bobby Seale. That's when they did it, okay? And what we were trying to say to somebody, well, the lawyer, he says, this is Bobby Seale. And so he got a hold of Kunstler, and Kunstler came out. And that's when they took the shotguns away. And then the word was out that Commissioner Oswald did not want me in the prison, would not let me in. And the news had covered that event, you know, that I was leaving. And the prisoners saw over the television inside the prison that I was not allowed in. And something happened, because I had split, you know, we was halfway back to Buffalo, 10 miles from the prison. And a state trooper car comes along and stops us and says, Commissioner Oswald would like for you to come back to prison. He will let you in. Well, they were basically 28 points, and to me, they were the demands of the prisoners. You know, of course, my point was I need to get inside the prison to talk to the prisoners about the 28 points. A couple of the people, though, said that we got to get them to compromise on these last 3 points. I think Commissioner Oswald had made the say, because we cannot negotiate on these last 3 points. So we went inside. When I went inside the prison, finally, when we got past of all this massive amount of firepower and idiot guards making a statement, you know what I mean? Yeah, we'll blow your ass away or something like this, what have you, etc. If anything happens, you get it too. They were saying that to me and my other party members who was with us. Finally, when we got to where the prisoners were, well, the leaders of the negotiating, the prisoners aspect, had me speak. I spoke. We sit down and we start talking, and then 3 of the brothers pulled me to the side at the other end of the table where no cameras and nobody was at, and start rapping to me about, we need a helicopter in here. If we can get a helicopter in here and get the 8 or 9 or 10, whoever it was that they wanted out, who could leave the country and go into exile, then at that point they would negotiate on they would drop the other 3 points that Oswald would not negotiate on, which involves some prisoners leaving the country as exile, one of those points, one of those last 3 points that were non-negotiable. So in effect, I couldn't In other words, I just couldn't make a decision that I was going to bring a helicopter. I told them I had to go back to Oakland, California. I had to talk to the Central Committee of the Black Panther Party to do this. So the next morning, which was Sunday, I came back to the prison and attempted to go in again. Commissioner Oswald would not let me in. Next morning, I came back to the prison and I got inside. I went into the negotiating committee's room, Commissioner Oswald was there. I told him to tell him I want to get in. And Commissioner Oswald came out and says, are you going to tell them they have to drop the last 3 points? I said, Commissioner Oswald, I can't do that at this time, He said, well, if you can't tell them to do that, then you can't go into prison. So I left, caught a plane a couple of hours later, flew to San Francisco, immediately had Huey P. Newton and other members of the Central Committee and Charles Gary, our lawyer, come, because we had to make this private between, Charles Gary is all about lawyers, right? So if anything come up about conspiracy, well, this is between our lawyers and us and what legal ground we have. And I explained to them that they wanted a helicopter to fly in over the wall to let the prisoners, 9 to 10 prisoners get out. And then, because they'd heard we had a United Airlines, Black United Airlines pilot who was a member of the Black Panther Party, who edited our newspaper part-time sometimes. And they thought maybe we could get a pilot for a helicopter. But Huey P. Newton and I and the rest of it, it was too short a period of time. It was too short notice. Even if we could have got one of our white radical revolutionary friends, it was too short a notice to even put it all together. And that the best thing I could do is go back and try to get with the negotiating committee to try to see what we can do. Now, problem with me is I wasn't able to say for the prisoners that you're going to drop those last 3 points. I couldn't do that. But that morning, Monday morning, when I arrived back in Buffalo, coming from the airport, one of the local lawyers had picked us up, dropped us off at the hotel. We threw our bags in the door, shut the door, got back in the car. Live on radio is suddenly, as we're driving a couple of miles from Buffalo, the prison and the prisoners are being attacked. I mean, this is what's going on. We're hearing this live on radio. We drive a few miles and said, they've attacked the prison. I mean, this is live. The next day, I was still there in Buffalo. The New York Times has printed that Bobby Seale had went in that last Saturday night and told the prisoners to cut the throats of the guards, which of course the coroner later confirmed that not one of the prisoners, which I never did tell the prisoners that. Well, we had arrived, we were picked up at the airport the next Monday morning, early that Monday morning. We went to a motel, threw our bags in the door, jumped in the car, headed to the prison. After a couple of miles on the road, there was a live broadcast of what was going on at the prison, and suddenly the live broadcast began to say they've attacked the prison, they're attacking now, and you could actually hear the gunfire in the background over the live broadcast of the car radio. And I've always contended that I was not the right person to be one of the key negotiating members concerning Attica, because she needed a person more like Martin Luther King, or even Malcolm X probably could handle it better than me, because I had a real dedication to political revolutionary activity, even at that time, having 26 Black Panther Party members killed by vicious racists in this country. Of course, we killed 14 of them too in their attacks on us, but it gotten to a point that I considered the idea of if it was possible to bring a helicopter in over the wall as a pure revolutionary act against the penal legal system that's part and parcel of the racist power structure in America. To me, that was like really get into the nitty-gritty of criticizing the penal legal system in America. Because if you really got down to real reform in the prison system of America, you would have to question the whole exploitation that goes on with capitalism in America. When I got into the prison yard and they announced that Brother Bobby Seale is here on the microphone as I was walking in, right on! These brothers was like overwhelmed. It was victory. We got Bobby Seale in here, the political revolutionary they'd probably heard so much about. That's what was going on. I mean, it was a pure warm welcoming, in the sense that, hey, Brother Bobby is here. I mean, there's been movies and stuff that misportrayed my role there, Finally, Commissioner Oswald said we could go, so then we're walking through the halls, and finally we get to a certain section that, they have police guards lined up, piggyback, so to speak, 20 on this side, 20 on this side. Then there's an upper level catwalk where there's 10 or 15 up there. They got machine guns. I'm talking about righteous machine guns, shotguns. And so we have to stop when we walk through this section here. And these racist guards talking about, yeah, you guys, you're gonna get it too. If anything happens, we're gonna make sure. I'm gonna make sure I blow him away. I'm gonna make sure I get his ass, or something like this effect, you know. So that's this racist atmosphere, and this is the cutoff point between out here and when you get ready to go down to this long corridor. Before you go down this long corridor, where the prisoners are in control. Okay, so this is when we had to walk through this situation. So you know. Vicious racism. I was invited to speak at the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana. And I thought that I would give some kind of speech to the convention itself, you know, with respect to us, the Black Panther Party, who were heavy political organizers around America. And when I arrived there, Jesse Jackson met me, and at some location that they told us to show at, he brought in Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes met me. I rapped with Isaac Hayes for a while. And then later I was asked to come out to speak, and I realized that I was speaking following some entertainment event. And so I spoke for 10 or 15 minutes. And then when we finished, I asked Jesse, if I remember correctly, I thought I was supposed to speak at the political convention where they were dealing with hammering out ideological and political goal objectives. He says, no, you were scheduled to speak here at this event. I says, oh. Later, Isaac Hayes went on at this location that I was at, which to me at that point, I realized that I had been pulled in or was being ostracized from the real convention floor delegates and people. Most of the people I was speaking to were dressed for an entertainment night situation, you know. The reason that maybe I wasn't asked to speak on the convention floor may have been, had to do with our own prominence. Maybe it had to do with a group of people who didn't necessarily, may have thought that we may have took some kind of leadership role in the National Black Political Convention. We were heavily critical of cultural nationalism being a part of leading what we thought should have been political revolutionary activity. That may have been a reason, you know, I couldn't. But in one context, I felt slighted. I thought it was underhanded on the part of whoever organized the convention, which in effect, so that contributed to a lot of things that went down in the 60s and the early 70s.